On March 3rd, Trump declared victory. He posted on Truth Social that Iran's air defense, air force, navy, and leadership were gone. He said they want to talk, but it was too late. 5 days into a war, the president claimed he had defeated Iran militarily. He hadn't. The gap between that declaration and reality is the most important story nobody's telling clearly right now. Understanding why the most powerful military cannot fully defeat Iran is not just about this war. It's about the fundamental limits of air power, the physics of geology and asymmetric strategy, why a country with a collapsing economy and a dead supreme leader is still firing missiles at 9 countries simultaneously. This is not a story about Iranian strength. Iran is losing in almost every conventional military metric. It's a story about the difference between winning a war and truly winning a war, and why they may not be the same. Let's start in 2002, when an Iranian opposition group revealed Iran had been secretly building 2 nuclear facilities. That triggered 2 decades of negotiations, sanctions, sabotage, assassinations, and escalation, all aimed at one objective: preventing Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. Every diplomatic agreement, every broken deal, every Israeli strike, every American threat has been downstream of that obsession. Understanding why that obsession could not be resolved through bombing alone requires understanding what Iran built. Iran has been preparing for a military strike since at least the early 2000s. Not preparing as if hoping to avoid it, but preparing for something it considered inevitable. The entire architecture of its nuclear program was designed around one core principle: survivability. When you know your enemy has the most powerful air force and bunker-busting bombs, you build deeper. You go underground. You go inside mountains. The Fordo uranium enrichment facility sits roughly 80 to 90 meters underground inside a mountain near Qom. That depth was chosen because Iranian engineers calculated the penetration depth of America's most powerful conventional munitions. They built below that depth, with multiple reinforced layers buried in solid rock, not soil. Rock transmits blast energy differently and is significantly harder to collapse. When the U.S. developed the GBU-57, the massive ordnance penetrator, Iran kept building deeper. The facility at Isfahan, housing 60% of Iran's near-weapons-grade enriched uranium, is buried so deep. America's top general told senators in a classified briefing that the United States does not have the military capability to destroy it. Not that it would be difficult, but that the capability does not exist. Democratic Senator Chris Murphy, after that briefing, told CNN that some of Iran's capabilities are so far underground. We can never reach them. There's no American bombing capacity that can reach it. Read that again. The United States, after 15 years and incalculable resources developing a bomb, specifically designed to destroy Iranian nuclear facilities, used that bomb on Fordo and Natanz in June 2025. And then its own chairman of the Joint Chiefs told Congress it did not use it on Isfahan because it wouldn't work. The bomb does not go deep enough. The facility is beyond the reach of conventional weapons. An early assessment by the Defense Intelligence Agency said the attack did not destroy the core components. It likely only set the program back by months. Iran may have moved some enriched uranium out before they were attacked. Months. The world's most technically complex military operation, executed with B-2 stealth bombers, flying 36 hours round trip from Missouri, using the largest conventional bomb in existence, dropped with extraordinary precision on targets studied for 15 years by analysts who literally dreamed about them. And the result, per the government's own intelligence assessment, was setting back the program by months. Not years, months. The survival of the 60% enriched uranium underscores the limits of conventional military strikes. General Kane said the underground storage areas at Isfahan are too deeply buried for even the MOP to destroy. So the United States did not try to destroy them and focused on the tunnel entrances instead. Here is the first reason the US and Israel cannot fully defeat Iran militarily. The primary strategic objective, eliminating Iran's nuclear capability, cannot be achieved by bombing alone, because the most critical materials are in places that bombs cannot reach. Trump can say obliteration. His officials can say resounding success. The physics of geology does not care about press releases. The uranium is still there in a mountain, in tunnels that are being repaired. Satellite imagery analysis suggested Iranians may have repaired collapsed tunnels at Isfahan, potentially recovering enriched uranium. The nuclear question, significant as it is only the first layer of why a full military defeat of Iran is unachievable. The second layer is Iran's missile strategy, revealing how Iran has thought about this war for decades. In the first 3 days of the war, Iran launched over 200 ballistic missiles at Israel. During the June 2025 war, they launched around 500, each requiring an interceptor rocket. Without U.S. help, Israel might have lost control of its airspace, given the sheer volume of attacks. Iran's missile strategy isn't to win a conventional war. It knows it cannot defeat the U.S. Its air force is decades old, and air defenses have been degraded by Israeli strikes. Iran's military planners built a different kind of military, one designed to make defeating Iran too expensive. Iran has been producing ballistic missiles at 100 per month, amassing a significant stockpile. Every missile Israel intercepts requires an expensive, complex interceptor that takes time to manufacture. Missiles are cheaper and faster to produce. Iran is trying to drain Israel's defenses. This is a war of attrition disguised as a missile war, making the math unsustainable for Israel. Israel's interceptor stockpiles are depleting at a worrying pace due to continuous fighting. The third layer of why full defeat is elusive is Iran's regional strategy, its most sophisticated move. Unable to defeat the US or Israel militarily, Iran raises the war's costs to build pressure for a ceasefire. Iran has hit all 6 Gulf Cooperation Council members, striking airports in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and Kuwait. Saudi Aramco's Ras Tanura refinery was struck by a drone, causing a fire and shutting down operations. Qatar also shut off energy supplies after Iranian attacks, impacting global energy. Iran targets Gulf states because they host American troops and their infrastructure is global. Disruptions raise oil prices, rattle markets, and create political pressure on governments worldwide. Iran hopes to create Arab and international pressure on the US to end the war and split from Israel. So far, this strategy hasn't worked, with Gulf states condemning Iran. But it doesn't mean it won't work over time. Oil prices are rising, flights grounded, markets rattled. The economic cost to the world accumulates. Can America absorb the cost indefinitely? The fourth layer is the regime survivability question. Trump and Netanyahu aim for regime change. Operations Roaring Lion and Epic Fury explicitly targeted regime change in Iran. The killing of Khamenei was a dramatic decapitation strike against the supreme leader of 85 million people. Yet, Iran quickly formed a council to govern until a new leader was chosen, showing no signs of backing down. This reveals a critical aspect of the Iranian state that military planners underestimated. The Islamic Republic is not a personality cult. It's a system, a revolutionary bureaucracy. It's a theocratic deep state with 47 years of institutional roots, embedded revolutionary guards. Millions of people's livelihoods and identities are tied to the system's survival. Khamenei's death doesn't end the system, just as a CEO's death doesn't end a corporation. The institution continues. A new leader will be chosen. The IRGC continues to fire missiles. The system functions under attack because it was built to function under attack. History is instructive and often ignored. The US bombed North Vietnam with immense ordnance. North Vietnam did not collapse. The US bombed Serbia into a ceasefire over Kosovo. Serbia was small, with no strategic depth, and bombing still took 78 days. The US destroyed Saddam Hussein's military in weeks, but the political problem remained. Iran is 1.6 million square kilometers, with geographic depth, mountainous terrain, and dispersed infrastructure. A nation of 85 million people, you can bomb it for years and not definitively defeat it. Iran has a strong army, but this is an aerial war, putting Iran at a disadvantage. However, Iran has increased its aerial missile stockpile. Defense analysts describe Iran as a wounded animal, yet its military strategy is working. It can still launch meaningful missile and drone attacks after the 2025 strikes. It has forced Israel and the US into a sustained, resource-intensive campaign, not a clean disarmament. A sustained, resource-intensive campaign. That phrase carries enormous weight. The United States lacks unlimited patience, money, or political consensus for this war. Republican Speaker Mike Johnson called the U.S. attack defensive. But Senator Mark Warner, a top Democrat, said there was no imminent threat to the U.S. from Iranians. There was a threat to Israel. The war lacks congressional authorization, launched by executive decision. American political support is not uniform. Combat, casualties, rising gas prices, and news of Iranian missile strikes erode the political consensus that allowed this operation to begin. Netanyahu played a key role in derailing nuclear talks, coordinating with the Trump administration for the green light on the February 28th attack on Iran. Omani mediators in Geneva were nearing a breakthrough to halt Iran's nuclear weapons development when the attack launched. This detail matters enormously. A diplomatic path was available when bombs dropped. Mediators were close to a breakthrough. That path was deliberately closed. What does military action achieve that diplomacy wouldn't? If nuclear materials survive underground, if the regime endures, and if Iran continues firing difficult-to-eliminate mobile missiles. If knowledge to rebuild the program survives in scientists' minds, what has been permanently eliminated and at what cost? Israel is fatigued by military operations in Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, and a previous round with Iran. A lengthy conflict could be more costly. Cities like Haifa and Tel Aviv face sustained attacks, emergency services are stretched, and tens of thousands of reservists have been mobilized. Israel's economy is under severe strain. Its air defense interceptor stockpiles are depleting faster than they can be replenished. The question is not whether Israel can win the air campaign. It clearly has air superiority. The question is whether air superiority translates into strategic objectives. Can Israel sustain the operational tempo required before Iran runs out of missiles, or before Israel runs out of political and economic capacity to keep intercepting them? Iran's nuclear and missile infrastructure has been heavily damaged, its economy further weakened, and it lost Khamenei in the strike on Tehran. This left the regime more vulnerable and internally strained, but its strategy is working to the extent that it has forced its enemies into a sustained campaign. Here's the central paradox of this war stated plainly. The United States and Israel can destroy almost anything above ground in Iran. They can kill its leaders, destroy its air force, degrade its missile infrastructure, damage its naval capacity, and strike its nuclear facilities repeatedly. They are doing all of these things, but they cannot reach the uranium that matters most, buried in mountains beyond the reach of any existing conventional weapon. They cannot permanently eliminate the knowledge required to rebuild a nuclear program, which lives in human minds and institutional memory. They cannot bomb a country of 85 million people into political submission without a ground invasion, which neither the United States nor Israel has the forces, the will, or the international support to execute. And they cannot sustain indefinitely a campaign whose costs, in money, in interceptors, in oil prices, in regional stability, in American political consensus, and in Israeli economic endurance, accumulate every single day. Trump says the war will last 4 to 5 weeks. What happens in week 6? What happens in month 3 if Iran is still firing missiles from dispersed mobile launchers? What happens when the question shifts from can you destroy Iran's military to can you actually achieve the objectives you started this war to accomplish? Military victory and strategic victory are not the same thing. The United States won every major military engagement in Vietnam. It lost the war. It destroyed Saddam Hussein's army in 3 weeks. The strategic outcome was 20 years of chaos that strengthened Iran. It executed one of the most technically stunning bombing campaigns in history against Iranian nuclear facilities in June 2025. The uranium is still in the mountain. The knowledge is still in the scientists. The program, per the government's own intelligence assessment, was set back by months. Winning this war, in the sense of achieving a durable outcome where Iran does not reconstitute its nuclear program, does not threaten the region, and does not continue to be a source of strategic instability, requires something that bombs cannot provide. It requires a political settlement, a new Iranian government that chooses a different relationship with the world, or a negotiated framework that permanently constrains what Iran can do. That is what the Geneva talks were building toward when they were interrupted by the bombs. And the brutal, documented irony of this war is that the military operation launched to prevent Iran from becoming a nuclear threat may, by destroying the diplomatic path and hardening Iranian nationalism in the face of foreign attack, have made that outcome harder to achieve, not easier. Bombing a country into accepting your terms only works when you can bomb it into complete submission. And that, for all the reasons laid out in the physics of its mountains, and the depth of its tunnels, and the resilience of its revolutionary state, and the limits of even the most powerful military on earth, the US and Israel demonstrably cannot do. That is not a political statement. It is a strategic assessment. And the documents, the classified briefings, the intelligence assessments, and the statements of the generals themselves confirm every word of it.